welcome back to Liking Hiking. So if you haven't watched part 1 of this series of what happens when everything goes wrong, definitely go and watch part 1 because otherwise you're not going to have any idea what is going on. A quick summary is basically we have left Kirsty here flat on her back. She's just fallen over and heard a crack in her ankle. She is with Sarah, who is from Germany. It's her first ever backpacking trip. They have less than 10% battery on their phone. No phone reception where Kirsty's fallen. And that's basically where we're at. So Sarah had gone up a hill, obviously quite some distance from you still, so you couldn't really communicate that way. So you have a bit of a communication barrier there. To ring Courtney and Hannah, who I guess are the more experienced hikers of the group. Yeah. From your knowledge, what sort of was the contents of that phone call?
Sarah, we didn't know at that point if my foot was broken or if it was just a terribly horrible sprain or something like that. Sarah, I think, was leaning more towards the broken side, from the way I reacted and things, and I think she was a bit scared. I was too, so fair enough. And so I think they just Courtney and Hannah told her to use the PLB. If I wasn't going to be walking anywhere, then to use it. And they, so Sarah came back and said, use it. I got it out. And
can I just cut in here? So the PLB we take with us as a group every time. However, with the PLB, you can only register it to one person. So you can put in details of multiple people that will be in the group. However, there's one sort of person, and that was, as it was kind of my idea to get the PLB. Thanks, Mum. So you've made the decision as a group to, right or wrongly, we'll go into that a little bit later, but to use the PLB.
Yeah, so I got it out of its case and I was looking at the instructions of how to use it, obviously having never used it, and it said on the back, for grave and imminent danger, and I looked at that and I went, yes, and turned it on, and a light started flashing green, which it said was the how you know it's working, and then I put it on the ground next to me, by that point, I was wrapped up in a sleeping bag and 3 jackets, and my foot was propped up at the most awkward angle. Like, one leg was like half sideways. And
now, you, just for clarity, I think we have spoken about some of our occupations before. Yes. So you are a teacher, so you are first aid qualified.
Yeah. So I was pretty calm about looking after myself. And I was quite focused on just keeping Sarah calm as well, because I knew she was very worried and wasn't quite sure how things were working. So I think I was
not a best first backpacking experience.
Yeah, it was more of an adventure than she signed up for, I think. Yeah. So I was kind of pretty calm, especially once I knew that help would be coming, even though I didn't know when or anything. And we sat there, continuing our discussions from sitting at Air Depot, because we were, again, stuck somewhere where we weren't moving without phone coverage or reception or battery, and sat there and we made bets about when the help would arrive, and
in the meantime, so as I told you in part 1, I had a first aid course, ironically, that I was attending that day, which happened to be the same day of all this is happening. So I'm sitting there in first aid, learning all sorts of things about heart attacks and shock and broken bones. And my phone starts ringing, and it was a private number, private ID, and I was like, well, I'm kind of at something important, like they'll leave a message. They didn't, but they repetitively called back. So about on the third time, I'm like, should probably answer this. So I sort of leave my first aid course or whatever, walk out the room, which I was like, this better be important. Yeah, I pick up and I'm like, hello, what's going on? And they're like, oh, it's I thought I would never forget his name, but I have. Anyway, it was a gentleman from Australian Search and Rescue calling, your beacon has been activated. And of course, when they activate the beacon, everything's very straightforward and direct. So, they're very to the point, I think, to make sure they're getting the information that they need. And that's why I think it was really good that the girls had called and told me the changes of their plans, because I was able then to relay that information, because of course once they had put their trip details in originally, they were going to be camping at Air Depot one night,
We would have been about 50 k's south if they would have gone 50 k's south, I guess, than where we were originally were.
Yeah, so it made quite a difference. And obviously the beacon sets off your GPS location, but just obviously the more information they know, the better. So, and of course with the PLB, you don't know the nature of the emergency. So unfortunately, I'm sitting there being like, okay, well, I know it's either Sarah with her sprained ankle, because the last I knew was that she'd sprained her ankle, or, something else more serious. It was still pretty warm, so there's risk of snake bites, allergies, those type of things. And I'm like, oh dear. It's not very nice being on the other end of the phone, I can tell you that. So yeah, I was thankful that you'd called and let me know the change of plans. That was good. So basically they just wanted to know as many details as I had. They asked me to confirm that Hannah and Courtney had left the other two groups. So, they kind of was like, well, if you can contact them, then, that gives them more time to, focus on the emergency at hand, because they don't know what the emergency is either. And as well, a question that they asked me that caused me to kind of reflect on my life choices was, do they know this is only for emergencies? And I went, I can't remember. I knew I had told Hannah and Courtney. However, my friends were not very supportive of my personal locator beacon purchase. Yeah. They thought it was a bit over the top. So I'm pretty sure when I said this is only for emergencies, they probably weren't listening very well. So I called Hannah's phone first and it goes straight to voicemail. I was like, this is not going well. So I'm not even at home, I'm out. It was through my work, so at least I was with some colleagues, but they were all still up doing their first aid training, and I'm like, oh, this is not how I want to spend my day. Anyway, so I try Courtney next, and I get voicemail, and I am like, as soon as you get this, ring me back. Maybe slight inflections of panic coming through there. So anyway, I think she must have just missed my call or whatever, because she called me straight back, and I was like, guys, what's going on? I've just got a phone call from Search and Rescue. They've activated their beacon, because of course I have no idea what's going on. And they're like, no, it's okay, we told them to. And I was just like, what now? I was like, if you guys had contact, why are you using this thing? But anyway, we'll get into that later. And they're like, yeah, it seems like Kirsty's broken her leg. And I'm like, oh no. I'm imagining, because you've seen a few of those creek crossings and some of that more challenging stuff that we've done. And I'm imagining the worst. So I'm thinking opened wound, fracture, bone sticking out, obviously broken. Anyway, don't have much time to talk through it. I asked them a few questions that I thought, Search and Rescue might want to know about the situation, did she know what condition Kirsty was in, you know, that type of thing. Did they know how bad it was? Any of that sort of stuff. And you know, and then so I called search and rescue right back. So I reckon it was Lee. From search and rescue. I told you I wouldn't forget his name. Thank you, Lee from search and rescue. So I called them back, and you just call like a 1-800 number or 1-300 number or something, I don't know. But anyway, then you just have to be asked to put through the right person. So so I went straight back, and they were so good. Like, they were so quick at handing me over to the right people. I explained the situation, and it was really weird, actually. Like, you could hear the search and rescue relaying everything I said to, I assume, a room full of people. So yeah, you know, I was like, you know, possible broken leg, and they're like, possible broken leg. And that's probably the first point where I heard helicopter. And so I'm like, great, helicopter, this is dramatic.
I'm all about drama.
Literally. So yeah, I was like, oh great, this is not good. So yeah, and then they also wanted to speak to Courtney and Hannah, so I handed them the number, and I said, look, you know, they are still hiking, so hopefully you'll get hold of them. But I think they did. And yeah, I think the biggest struggle they had was not having communication with these girls. Yeah. So yeah, because not much you could do about it. No phone reception where you are. That type of situation. So yeah, I guess I kind of finished off with them, and they're like, we'll let you know when anything happens. Anyway, and then I'm like, great. Now I have to call Kirsty's parents. So yes. I think, Kirsty, you owe me a lot. Yes. Because no one wants to call their friend's mum and be like, so your daughter's being rescued by a helicopter. But yeah, so that kind of left me for the next couple of hours just sitting in first aid wondering. So yes. Back to the trail. So
I fell at just after 9:30 in the morning. I remember quite vividly. And I thought that, given that we were inside a national park, and we weren't terribly far away from the highway, that it wouldn't be forever hours. So I thought they would be there before 12. Sarah thought it would be after 12. I ended up being right. They got there at about 10 to 12. And I never heard a helicopter, but Hannah and Courtney did hear a helicopter. The first I saw of rescue was a full drive coming up the pathway towards us. It was a SES vehicle, so with its all orange.
So state emergency services volunteer run.
And they drove up. I fell on the road, as it turns out, because it's a road that goes through Dutchmanstern. And I had stayed immediately on the road, so they had zero problems finding me. They just drove straight up to me. And there was a second car that came along about 10 minutes later. And so they got out, and they came over and...
So this is a question I've had for a while, which I actually haven't even had a chance to ask you. Was it just the SES people? Was there police as well?
There was a police. There was one policeman who came. The second car was actually a police car. The first car was a SES car. Both full drives. And they thanked me because they had fun full driving through the park to get there. And I was like, okay. Glad to help. Thank you for coming. The area I fell was quite covered by trees. The path itself was open to sunlight, and I had been sitting in the sun for a couple of hours. But the surrounds, there was no flat ground and there was no open areas. So when the SES people got there, they looked at it and went, the helicopter's not going to be able to land. I reckon we can get her out in full drive. So then they left me there and trundled off and got, because they didn't have reception in that spot either. So they went over and got their satellite phone with the giant antenna and walked up a hill a bit and called off the helicopter. And so it got sent back to Adelaide. Yeah, so the path we were on, it wasn't an immediate drop off on the sides, but it was once you left the road, there was a slope. So we pretty much were limited to navigating on the road, and it was just wide enough for a full drive, and like you could open the door and kind of hop in. So it was a little tricky. But they came and they looked at my foot. I had left my shoe on to keep the swelling down, but around above my ankle was just like twice its size immediately. So they looked at it, and I could wiggle my toes, but the rest of my foot, like even touching it, was not pleasant. And I carry flip-flops with me when I'm hiking for shoes when I'm camping. So they actually used my flip-flops and some bandages they had in their car to splint my foot on either side, so it's all stayed together, and wrapped it up, and I was in a giant bundle of flip-flops and bandages. It was like the size of a moon boot just around my foot. And then I'd been laying on the ground, and I couldn't put any weight on my foot. It wasn't a game to put it on the ground. So they waited for the second car to come, which had the policeman in it. And they picked me up, and kind of, I had my arms around their shoulders and attempted to hop, but they pretty much just dragged me.
Well, I guess that like bouncing on the foot would have not nice.
I kind of kept my balance, and then they moved me over to the full drive, and they put me in the front seat because they worked out that I could still sit, and then I held my leg so my foot wasn't on the ground. And Sarah actually ended up having to go in the other car, the police car, because there wasn't enough seats. And then they drove us out. Yeah, so they put all of our stuff in the lockup, because it was a police car, like a ute, with the lockup for if you arrest anyone. So all of our gear got locked up, and we went, and they had to full
Probably
drive.
smelled so bad they needed to put it in the lockup.
Yeah, and we full drove out of the Flinders. So they came.
So did you continue then up the road northwards?
Yes.
Okay,
So
yeah.
they came through the conservation park, because we'd just entered it. They came through the conservation park to meet us, and then we continued out back the way we'd just walked. And it was quite demoralising for what had taken us like an hour to carefully walk all these hills. They just drove straight over. But then, of course, we had the...
So these roads as well, just for context, are not public roads.
No.
They're access paths for emergency service vehicles, for national park personnel, you know, those type of things. So you can't just drive in there. It's not like anyone can just go in there.
Driving.
So those gates are actually normally kept locked.
Yeah. So they start full driving out. And I think at that point, Margaret, the lovely SES lady who was the main first aid officer for the SES group, didn't think my foot was broken. It was not... I'd never been full driving before, and I'm not in a hurry to go again, because it was so bumpy, and any bump, my foot was jolting and painful. And we were going up creek beds, down creek beds, all over the shop. And we came up to a fence that had clearly used to be a gate, because there was a gate post there, but they just turned it into a fence. And
it wasn't one of those, you know, the fences that you open?
No, well, they looked and they couldn't work it out.
Okay.
I don't know, maybe it was. And so we drove up a bit further to see if there was a gate. They'd just moved the gate. And we came to an impassable creek bed, and there was no other option. But luckily the fence was one of the ones where some of the posts aren't in the ground. It's like there's like posts and floating posts. So they just pushed the fence over, and we drove over it, and then they fixed it up again.
That poor farmer.
Yeah, and then we came to a gate that was locked, and the SES carries keys to all of the padlocks, because it was private property. We were driving through a ranch, I forget which one it was. They carry gates to all the keys to all the gates, but it was padlocked with 2 padlocks, and they only had a key to unlock 1 padlock. So then the policeman got out his bolt cutters and cut through the gate.
I guess that's why they take the police officer as well, because I'm guessing the SES don't have authority to just go randomly chopping off padlocks of people's gates.
Yes.
So
yeah, we went through, and then they locked it with the other. So they didn't leave the gate unlocked. They could lock one lock.
Yeah.
So they left it locked. We went through.
Being a volunteer thing, they probably know exactly whose gate it is.
Yeah, they were talking about it. Yeah.
Yeah, and just be like, hey, you need to replace that, that one, and give us the key.
And then we got out onto a road that led to the highway, it was a better maintained dirt road, as opposed to a four-wheel driving track. And that was slightly better for my foot, but by that time my painkillers had worn off, because it had been 4 hours since I'd done the injury, and I was not enjoying myself at all. But we eventually got out onto the highway, and funny story, the best bit about the whole adventure, they were like, do you mind if we go through the Macca's drive-through? And I was like, what? And they were like, we get half price when we're like on duty. So we detoured through McDonald's. And
what town there has a McDonald's?
I think it was Port Augusta.
Oh, you guys went out that way.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, actually, I think I remember this because when I was looking at the map to say where you guys could go, I thought maybe you could follow just one of those roads and just go out to the highway and, find a car. But I think it would have been too far anyway. But okay. So, this is part of the story I don't know. Continue.
Yeah, we went through the drive-through.
Did they get you food?
They offered to get me food, but I thought if I ate anything, I was going to throw up because I was like in that part of pain where I was like, things aren't going well. But sitting in an actual road, unless they hit a pothole, my foot was not moving and it was okay. And then they took me to the Corn Country Hospital. So it was about 2 hours. I got to the hospital at 2:10. So they got to me just before 12 and they delivered me to the hospital about 2 hours later, which I was very appreciative to all their efforts. John was my driver, and he was fantastic. Thank you, John, if you ever see this video.
I think you made the talk of the town from what the other girls were saying. Yes. So
the next morning, we were sitting outside of our accommodation, and someone walked past and goes, "Oh, you're the one who broke her leg," and I was like, "Yeah, that's me."
Yeah. So anyway, you get delivered to the hospital.
Yes.
And,
so they put me in a wheelchair and put me on the bed, and then they handed me some good drugs and a TV remote and said, "Wait for the doctor." And so we sat there watching gymnastics, and
so it was just you and Sarah at this point, wasn't it? Yeah. So the other girls pretty much went, okay, well, this is pretty serious. So they
were hiked
out to the road. Well, actually, they didn't hike out to the road. So Horrocks Pass, where you saw on my latest video, is where they met the road, obviously coming down from Mount Brown. And they just caught a lift back to Melrose with where the car was, and
they went to
there.
Melrose, got the first car, but remember they left some stuff at Dutchman's Stern that they'd taken from Sarah's backpack. Yeah. So they drove to Dutchman's Stern, picked up that stuff, and then they drove back to our starting point at, where did we start? I forget. Went back and got the first car, and then came to Corn Hospital.
So they had keys for all those cars then, which was lucky, I guess.
Yes. Well, we'd taken Hannah and Courtney's cars.
Oh, okay, yeah.
That worked out well. And so they got to the hospital about 5 o'clock.
Had you seen the doctor by that point?
No, the doctor came at 5:30. And then the doctor looked at it all. They chose not to x-ray it at that point, and he thought it was just a sprain, really bad sprain, and at that point I was feeling like an idiot for using a panic button for a sprain.
I was feeling like they were idiots.
And by this point it was pretty close to 6 o'clock on the Saturday, and we were like, well, we could drive home right now, but it's about a 3-hour drive. Let's not. We're all exhausted and it's been a heck of a day. Courtney booked us a cabin at the local caravan park, got into bed and had my foot carefully propped up on a pillow. And the next morning we drove home. And then I had, I was operating under it's a really bad sprain. In a week or so, go see the doctor again and check if it's ligament damage, was what they had told me. And I went home to my parents' house for dinner on the Wednesday, so 5 days after the injury. And my dad, who works in the medical industry, looked at my foot and went, and sent me to the emergency department. And they x-rayed it, and it was broken. So then I stopped feeling quite so dramatic, and I ended up having surgery, and I now have a plate holding my ankle together because I broke 2 ankle bones, one on either side of the foot, and then part of the tibia fractured away from the ankle, I believe. I haven't seen the x-ray, so I don't actually know quite what it means. But I believe I now have a plate holding the tibia all together. And they put me in a moon boot, and I've been here ever since.
We kind of want to do like a bit of a review on our own actions, I guess, so that hopefully you can learn from some of the things that perhaps we should have done a bit better. Because I guess when you're in that situation, it's really hard to, think logically and think through the different scenarios. And, so, like, I guess the thing we did well was the fact that you were injured. There was no way you were getting out of there on your own.
No. I definitely needed to be rescued.
Yeah.
I didn't need to be rescued by major search and rescue, but I did need to be rescued.
Yeah. So, I guess, like, for me, as a sort of on the side person,
yes,
sort of on the other end, I guess, like, I didn't have that sort of in the situation sort of moments going on. So I'm, kind of thinking through the different options. And I think, do you think it kind of would have been better if perhaps, like, either Sarah or even Courtney and Hannah called the SES directly?
Yes. If we'd been able to communicate, and I think when people say leg, I think they're thinking like thigh or shin rather than, because it was actually my ankle that was the problem. I think they were thinking, a much bigger bone had broken than, tibia is still part of the shin, leg, calf muscles, whatever they are.
Yeah.
But it's all kind of located in my ankle. So if we were able to give them more precise information, definitely would have been helpful. At the time, it had not even twigged to me that it was possible to just call the SES and get rescued that way. I did not know until Shell had sent a message going, next time just call the SES, and I was like, you can do that.
So I guess like I live a bit more rurally at the moment. So SES, CFS, that type of thing is what makes our towns and that go round. We are very thankful to all those volunteers. It was National Volunteer Week the other week.
I now have the SES number saved in my phone. Next time, it's all good.
That's not next time. And I think thinking it through, like using the PLB, I think potentially if you were unable to be rescued via communicating your location, because obviously you guys don't really know exactly.
Yeah. Well, luckily at that one, I could be like, I'm about 15 metres below the gate to gate 10 to Dutchman Stern National Park.
Yeah, so you could have maybe...
So I could have communicated like my position exactly, but that was just because I had just passed the gate. If we were anywhere else, I would have been a lot less precise.
Yeah, and I guess you were on the road, literally, as you said. Yes. So I think maybe call first.
Yeah.
If then, like, you had enough food, enough water.
Yeah, well, we were expecting to hike for 5 days, and so we still had another 2-day supply, and we'd left Air Depot with a full amount of water, just because I was a little worried if Sarah's foot wasn't completely healed, then we could have stopped for an extra day and just camped in the middle of nowhere and then gone to Dutchman's Stern over 2 days. We'd organised with Hannah and Courtney to meet at 6 p.m. at Dutchman's Stern. So that was our deadline. And I was like, we can just take, 16 Ks as slow as we need to go. We've got plenty of water. So, yeah, we were fine supply-wise. And we, had a tent. We could have set up camp and everything.
Yeah.
But...
So, I guess, maybe the takeaway was perhaps, wait a little bit. Don't rush into it, I think. Obviously, if you were dying.
Yes.
And obviously the shock is a bit of a concern.
Sarah was like, your lips are blue. And I was like, it's okay. Cover me with blankets. Give me some sugar. We'll get through this.
Yeah. So I guess it's a bit, the shock is a bit of a concern. And yeah, obviously did need rescuing, but perhaps we could have gone about it a slightly different
The policemen there, they came and checked that it could be turned off. They turned it all off and packed it up, and they were like, it's good you've got this. A lot of hikers don't carry it. And then
why? They're not that expensive,
no,
really.
And Margaret was like,
these ones.
I'm not sure you needed it just for this. And I was like, at that point, that was when I started feeling a little bit, well, I'm sorry if I didn't mean to use it, I shouldn't. But the policeman was like, no, it's good to carry it. So I think,
it was kind of that on the line type of, having that extra line of communication, I think,
yes, plays
a big part in it. And I think that's where we'll go to sort of in part 3 about the different types of devices that we now carry. So that's our story of what happens when everything goes wrong.
And
so
I'm out of hiking for the rest of the season now because I'm heading off on the grand Europe adventure, England adventure, and I might get, a 5K hike in or something when my foot's healed up. But I'm still in this boot.
Even 5Ks will be...
We'll see. I'm in this boot for another month, and then I have to have surgery again to take the bolts out. The plate stays, but the bolts go in a while. And by the time it's healed up, it'll be summer, and that's the no hiking here in Australia. So you'll see me next again in
next
2020.
Season. Yep.
Sad.
So I think if you have ever been rescued, know of anyone being rescued, feel free to leave your experiences in the comments down below. I think it's good to tell people what to expect so that, if you're watching this video and you have a PLB, have you thought of just being able to call someone? Or, being able to call someone or text someone who can then call someone.
Yes.
And sort of, I think, setting time deadlines as well. So, if you haven't heard anything by this time, then set the PLB off. That type of thing. Being really clear communicators. So, if you hike in a group, it might be a good idea to even just go through when to
use and when not to use.
Yeah. And, the different types of things you can do in a situation. So that kind of like the first aid training, the training kicks in, or, that conversation kicks in. But anyway, so we will leave you. That's the end of part 2. But in a fortnight's time, we will have part 3 where we go into the different devices and a little bit more type of things. So stay tuned. And as always, guys, keep on liking hiking, even if you're out for the season.